supernatural is something that isn't supposed to happen, but it does happen.
And no nation which expects to be the leader of other nations can expect to stay behind in this race for space.
What does it take to convince you that the dead do not always rest in peace?
Welcome to the Three Beards podcast. My name is Craig, along with Austin. Chris is out today, and we have with us a special guest, Maria Wheatley, live from across the pond in the wonderful area of UK. How are you? How are you tonight, Maria? Appreciate you coming on the show. It's late.
Yeah, I know it's the witching hour over here, but it's all good. I'm so glad to be here with you guys.
Yeah, we talked to Mark Eddy, mutual friend. He got us in touch with you. We've really been looking forward to it. And this was something that just as I was going through all the lists of stuff, there was a couple things like certain topics. Hello, Laura. Thanks for watching. We had, dowsing, geomancy, all of your work in the megalithic, in the Neolithic structures throughout the UK and that part of the world was, incredibly fascinating. And we even brought your name up last episode when we were talking with Reverend Sean Whittington. And one of the things, before I forget, I want to make sure that I bring this up to you. Now, he had a couple of dowsing rods that shook. And so he's every time, like when his wife, nothing happens, but as soon as he holds them up, they start spinning, and then both of them come back and point at him every time. And so I promised him I would ask you, what that meant, because I know like some of your videos, you said you're in balance if the dowsing rod points back at you. So I was wondering, what does that mean if you're holding two and they both just free spin and then eventually just come and just point right at you?
Well, really, the dowsing is an art where you're supposed to be asking it a question. It's a bit like a divination system with the tarot. You're supposed to direct a question at it. Now, if you're just holding the rods and they're kind of in free spin, so to speak, then that could be for a variety of different reasons. It could be acting to a mood. It could be acting to a space. It could be acting to an energy. So how a master dowser would douse is you direct a question to that which you want an answer for.
Okay. So have you ever had that where it just like free spins and then all of a sudden it just goes and then points back at you?
Only really if you're on a strong kind of vortex energy or something that's kind of creating an energy field, then the rods will do that. So if you're going to an ancient site and you're at the heart of Stonehenge, you're by the altar stone, for example, you will get a very similar reaction from the dowsing rods.
What if you're in an incredibly haunted house? Because that's where he's at. So when he was talking,
yeah. Okay, well there you go. I think the clue's there, really, don't you? So you're going to have a lot of energy and you're going to have a lot of reaction in that respect.
Okay, yeah, because I just promised him, that we would make sure that we asked that question, because that was one that was really, that was the burning one. It kept in my head. It's like, we got to do it. Hey, sir, that's my sister. Thanks for watching, sis. Mark, he's here watching. Thanks, everybody. So one of the other ones that I'm not as familiar with myself, and I wanted to kind of have you, maybe for the people that aren't familiar with the term as well either, geomancy. What is if you had to give the quick abridged, just this is the, the geomancy for dummies type breakdown, what would you refer to as geomancy for the people out there?
Geomancy, simply put, is studying the earth and studying earth energies. That's it in its simplicity. Geo means earth and mancy means divination. So it's divination of the earth. How to decode different energies and how to decode all of the different aspects of different types of earth energies is all under the umbrella name of geomancy. It's understanding Gaia. It's understanding Gaia's energies.
Interesting.
Okay. Yeah, now, as before I get too far away, as I meant to right there at the beginning. I just jumped ahead, but everybody needs to, for anybody that's looking for more information about it, you go to the aveburyexperience.co.uk. That's her main site. You can also go to Amazon and look at, because I believe you can you purchase the books directly from you as well? Is that your preferred way, or do you prefer if they go to Amazon?
It's whichever way anybody
Okay.
wants to go. I mean, it's good to go to the website because you go direct, but it's all good on Amazon.
Definitely book sales, good no matter which way. But yeah, through the website. So
Exactly.
now do you offer book signings?
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
signed copies? Okay.
If they come through me, they get a signed copy.
Perfect.
That's
So
awesome.
everybody, yeah. So we'll have that site kind of going through. It's going on the ticker right now for anybody. The aveburyexperience.co.uk. So I just going through some of your stuff. I mean, some of these things that we were talking about. I wanted to cover, like, one, your work in some of the elongated skulls that have been found around Stonehenge and some of these hinges. What do you think this was due to, a ritual type thing, with the elongating of the skulls, or was this something that happened elsewhere and this was more like the Mecca where they tended to travel to, and then as they pass away, they get buried there?
I think Stonehenge and other henges nearby, such as Avebury Henge, they are the spiritual capitals of the ancient county of Wessex, that's southern England. And they're both iconic temples. So the elongated skulled people were throughout the British Isles in the Neolithic, but their capitals were Stonehenge and Avebury Henge, because Avebury Henge is the largest stone circle in the world, and Stonehenge is unique. There isn't another stone circle like it in the world.
Yeah, I think he's bringing up, showing a picture of there. It's we talked a little bit prior to the show. It's like you were saying, how many, what is the overall size of this Avebury Henge?
Avebury Henge is gigantic. If you take a diameter, it's about 1,088 feet in diameter across. Now, imagine how many people you could fit in for a ceremony inside of Avebury, whereas Stonehenge is only about 108 feet across. So you could fit 10 Stonehenges into Avebury Henge. That's the difference between those two sites. When people go to Stonehenge, they think it's gigantic because they see it on the internet, just like you guys do up then. But when you go there, it's actually quite small and confined. But at Avebury, you have to walk a long distance from one part of the monument to the other. And if you go from the avenues, it's about 3 miles in diameter, just from one avenue to another avenue. It's gigantic.
It's one of those, when you're looking at those type of setups, you realize just the, I mean, I'm always blown away with what people from that time were able to do. It's just, and you've always look at it, it's like this information, what happened? Why was it lost? Because you've got these people that don't have the technology that we have nowadays, and I've seen some of the recreations, and they cannot do in the same fashion that some of these people did. I mean, the perfect joints on some of these things, and that's one of the mysteries. I mean, have you, in your research, have you been figuring out something? Because I know you do a lot of stuff with the energy. One of the interviews I watched from you, and I really loved how you talked about it, I wanted to get on that too, was how you talked about when the stones are placed in the ground, that makes a connection. It's almost like plugging the stone into the ground and then it charges it. Do you think this had something to do with that ability to stack these stones, to align these ones in the way? I mean, do you think this was something that was able to do that?
I think what the ancients were doing, they were very sensitized to the earth. We tend to have a disconnect with the earth these days, the majority of people anyway. So I think especially with the elongated skull people, they had an intimate relationship with the earth energies of Gaia. So they kind of knew where they were. They even knew where you have two different types of geology where they meet. So for example, if you had chalk bedrock that met a different type of soil, They recognized all the different nuances to do with the earth. And when you do plug a standing stone into an energy system, and that energy system could be a ley line, it could be a grid line, it could be an earth current, it could be underground water, it could be a variety of different types of energies. It's a bit like putting an acupuncture needle into a meridian line. You're activating the whole system. So if I put an acupuncture needle into me, I'm activating the whole. So Avebury Henge is a part of the whole of the globe. And if you activate Avebury, you activate elsewhere. If you activate the pyramids, you activate elsewhere. So what the ancients were doing, they were looking for these different types of earth energy that Gaia emits, and they would place the standing stone into the ground. Because when you look at a standing stone of Avebury or Stonehenge, for instance, it's about 2 to 3 feet in the ground, and it towers above as well. And then what happens is the stone with its crystal lattice structure, it absorbs the earth energy up through it like this, and it starts transmitting it in different various ways. So you have 5 energy transmission bands above the ground and 2 below. And I was with Rodney Hale, who worked with the Dragon Project with Paul Devereaux, and we used some very sophisticated equipment, and we got the Hertz frequency being emitted by those standing stones, which is around 18 Hertz, and you hear at 20. So imagine if you were really sensitized to the earth. Perhaps our ancient ancestors had a perception of hearing the stones as well as seeing them.
That was incredible, because that was in that interview too. There, you were talking about it, that was the one I loved, is just how when you use that equipment, you'd go up and you'd hear the sound, it would emit the thing, and then it would go away. And then as you went up, all of a sudden the sound hit again. And I had never heard that part about the hinges before. And so to me, just modern day time, it was almost, I love the way you described it, as this is a potential that all these hinges around here were simultaneously connected.
They were, because on those energy bands, if you imagine there's quite high up like that, it transmits to the next standing stone, which could be miles away. And Rodney and I picked that up. And there's one energy band, which is a localized band, which will go from one stone to the other stone, to the other stone, to the other stone. And in a way, when we think about it, it's like Neolithic Wi-Fi. No wires, transmitting energy.
Huh.
Well, yeah, Julie just posted, it's like teenagers can hear below 18.
Yeah.
I don't know. They can, yeah.
So that was, that's kind of like a common theme. So it's one of these things. I mean, it's almost bad as adults. It seems like we want beat this stuff out of our kids. Don't be, don't be crazy. Don't do this stuff. Don't, just, when you're thinking about it, these children are able to see stuff that we think, yeah, you're just overactive imagination. I mean, what's the chances that as they're going around, it's like, Dad, you hear that? What are you talking about? I mean, they could hear something like that, and they're attuned to it, and we're just like, would you stop distracting me? I'm talking to Maria. Come on, stop. You just try to point it out.
Yeah, I also would like to point out that with the elongated skull people who, constructed these temples, they really did, because they start in the Neolithic. Monuments like Avebury and Stonehenge are in different phases. They start in the Neolithic, then they're expanded in the Bronze Age. And the long skull people didn't have their ears where we have them, which is kind of in the middle of the head. They had theirs much more extended backwards. So I think maybe their whole perception of how they heard the stone's energies, or even our own voices speaking to them, may have been a completely different perception.
I should have asked that question. I was such a chicken. I was like, I'm going to ask this question about the elongated heads. Maybe they could hear differently, and she's going to look at me like,
what am I doing?
So I had that question in my head. I'm like, going, I should have asked it. I go, I would have seemed so much smarter to her.
You seem smart.
I'm going to post a picture. In the middle of the Stonehenge, it looks like there's like houses, like what is that in the middle?
That's actually Avebury Henge. So in the middle of it, you do have a small village, you have a pub, you have a couple of shops, you have residential homes, for example. You have a local store where you would buy food. It's a thriving village in the middle of a massive henge complex.
Huh.
And if you put that image up again, because surrounding Avebury, you can see there's a ditch and a bank. Originally, because you're in chalk downland in Wessex, in Wiltshire, that would have been gleaming chalk white. So imagine a huge white circle going all the way around it as well. The chalk would have been exposed. And that's the same as at Stonehenge, which had a slightly different henge. It had a bank on the outside, a ditch, and then another bank. But it would have been so pristine and so white looking. You'd have seen it react to the sunlight and the moonlight. There would have been daytime rituals, and undoubtedly there would have been nighttime rituals as well, because these monuments were aligned to the moon and the sun.
How cool would that have been if the Red Lion pub was dead center of the henge? You know, I was just thinking about it. It's like, here you have the pub. I mean, how crazy that would be, all the stories. You're like, it wouldn't just be drunken stories, it would actually be real things levitate. I'm telling you, that glass levitated.
Oh, that's so cool.
I looked up, over the time, obviously back in the day, everything was like witchcraft and everything else, and they're calling dowsing just pseudoscience. It's just a random chance. Do you believe that, or a lot of people just think it's random chance? It's not real.
It's not random chance, because dowsing has been used for many years to find water. I found water. I found numerous wells, and it was documented by Cleopatra that she would have people find gold and different minerals. It was documented in ancient China that dowsing could be used to raise the fertility of the earth, as well as find water and different minerals. So I think our ancient ancestors were very familiar with the ancient art, and they used it on many different levels.
Yeah, that's crazy. Like, there's all this evidence, but they're like, nah, not enough. It's random chance. I was like, that doesn't make any sense.
But then how would they find wells back in antiquity? How would you know where the underground water was? It's not rocket science.
Well, and that was one of the things I really liked, that video I watched of you. God, I'm looking up real quick so I can get the title. I want to give it due credit, but I love how you held the single rod, and after you balanced, when you're balanced, how you told it to look at the cactus, find the cactus lamp. And I think just right over to the lamp. I'm like, oh, that's trippy. And then it's just you're same thing. It's like, okay, now I want to find the other, the other light source, and the thing just kind of moving, and all of a sudden, boink, right at the lamp. I'm like, oh, that is crazy cool.
That's it exactly. That's called directional dowsing. If you want to find something, be that underground water or a ley line or a grid line, whatever you're dowsing for, you say to your rod, which is in search position, which is pointing straight ahead and parallel to the ground, you then say to your rod, show me the direction of the nearest ley, and it will start to waver like this, and then it will point to a direction, and that's the direction you have to walk until the rod goes to found. And then you know that you have found that which you have asked for.
What would you say?
Very simple.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, what would you say? I mean, it's on the spot. I know how hard it is to come up with these things right real quick, but what you would say, like the coolest, the most impressed you were of a find through your dowsing rods, like when you were doing some dowsing, you're like, I cannot believe that I was able to find that with the sake, because it even surprised yourself. What would you say was the thing that surprised Maria the most when you were doing your art?
What surprised Maria the most was I was asked to find a very ancient holy well just recently, actually, probably about sort of 4 or 5 months ago. And it was being in a building that had an extension on in the 1960s. So we're now in a bathroom. Yeah, and I'm supposed to find this holy well, and I'm using a traditional hazel twig. Yeah, I'm using a traditional hazel twig, thinking I've got to find this holy well because they want it to be a center, and the sort of thing. And the rod goes up under pressure if you use a traditional hazel rod. You cannot stop that pressure going up, and it really rises up, and it's quite powerful. And I found the holy well quite close to the toilet.
Oh, that's awesome. That's what I was hoping for. That was the payout I was hoping for. It's got to be right by the toilet. It has to be.
That's true. It was. It seriously was. But it was
Well,
found, and it's going to be all knocked down, and the well's going to be restored, and it's going to go back to its happy times and former times.
awesome.
And Nancy, she asked a question
Yeah, you
about
beat me
finding
to
real
it.
dowsing rods, and I was going to say, if you go to the aveburyexperience.co in her shop, she actually has copper dowsing rods and the double-barreled pendulum for sale there as
Yeah,
well.
and
So
I'd like to say to Nancy, the great thing about copper is that it's a very good conductor. Is we all know that because electricity goes through copper. But more than that, on a metaphysical level, it corresponds to the goddess Venus, which corresponds to Gaia, and it's a very good medium to douse earth energies with, especially for women.
Huh.
that's cool. And then I was just looking at here too on the thing, the geomancy cards. I don't know if I've ever heard of those before until just now. I mean, that shows my naivety in this, in this as I'm learning. So it was, yeah, there they are, the green, those green things, the geomancy cards.
Geomancy cards are the oldest divination system known to man, actually. Well, it was originally they were dots in the ground. You'd throw seeds on the ground, and there's 16 geomancy cards, which are said to be the 16 different moods of Gaia. And that some represent a harvest that is plentiful, a poor harvest, and they have different expressions, and they're said to be the expressions of Gaia. So when you consult the geomancy cards, you can use that as a divination system to find out about, your present set of circumstances or the future. But it is one of the oldest of the 4 elemental divination systems. You had fire, you had air, you had water, and you had earth.
Yeah, and I liked your pendulum that you talked about there too, where it incorporated all 4 of those into your pendulum that you had in that interview. And I thought that was is that something that you had made specifically for yourself, or is that something that you sell at different times, like on your shop?
I don't sell those pendulums. That was a pendulum that I had commissioned in Italy.
Wow. We know how expensive that was now.
It was quite a few euros, I can assure you.
That was a couple quid. Just
A couple of quid, couple of bucks.
yeah. Oh my gosh. As we were talking to too, I was looking at your books, and it's some of the ones that you really get into. It's just, you've got several, on that Avebury, hinge. And then when I was talking with Mark a little bit here, he brought up this question. I really liked it too, about the planned tunnel for Stonehenge, and just get your thoughts on that, on just whether it's, a terrible idea, don't do it, or, the logistical nightmare of the archaeological work that would have to be done to do this tunnel.
If English Heritage wanted a quieter landscape for Stonehenge rather to be returned to and its natural sort of habitat, then Stonehenge is surrounded by a lot of military establishments. Only a mile and a half towards the north, you have an establishment on Lark Hill where they're constantly, letting off gunfire. It's not a quiet place. So even if you put the tunnel in to try and make it quiet, it's not going to be a quiet place. What I think English Heritage are trying to do is have total control of that landscape, because if they take out the 2 existing trackways that are quite close, one's called trackway 51 that goes from the A303 right the way up to Lark Hill, then they will have total control of that landscape, and you will not be able to just walk in there. Whereas now I could walk down a trackway from Lark Hill and enter the Stonehenge environs, not visit the stone circle, but I would be in the environs. English Heritage would now, if they have that tunnel, have complete control of the area. So for me, I'm all for freedom. I quite like the fact that there's hippies sometimes camping in their camper vans there, and they have the freedom to do what they want in the Stonehenge environs. They've all been kicked off, and now they're probably going to grass that over in the near future, undoubtedly.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. I mean, because I hadn't even heard about that, and I'm shocked that they actually have a live munitions thing next to here. It's like the point is we don't want to knock these things down. I think the last thing we want to do is have live fire military exercises right next door where something could go wrong.
Well, exactly. You know, there's numerous military establishments surrounding Stonehenge, and you tend to get that. I remember doing a series with the UFO hunters on vortexes and ancient sites and military establishments, and it seemed to follow in all of their research. That's what happens. You get a military establishment, and then you get a stone circle. And then you get and there's a vortex within the ancient site itself. So maybe that goes on at places like Stonehenge.
One of the other things I wanted to touch on, kind of while we're talking about this too, is, with a few people, I mean, everybody's heard of Stonehenge. They've heard the theories and stuff. What would you say is probably the leading cause of what the purpose of these henges were for? Like why they were created. Were these healing centers? Were these, like people say, these were the place where human sacrifices, the druids came here to slaughter, which is you get these great, and then you have them, these are perfectly aligned. What do you think is probably right now the leading one that you think is probably the best case for what was the purpose?
I think each ancient site has its own energy. So for Stonehenge, for example, if we look to a church has many different aspects about it. You could go there to be married, you could go there to be, buried, you could go there in times of stress and pain. And I think the ancients were creating that at Stonehenge. Stonehenge isn't one thing and one thing alone. So it is a healing center. And there's archaeologists that agree with that, such as Timothy DeVille and Jeffrey Wainwright. They think it's the healing lords of the ancient world. And indeed, I think that is the case. It's also an astronomical calendar. It's also an eclipse predicting a calendar, as Gerald Hawkins discovered in the 1960s. I think as well, it was a metaphysical capital and a college. When we look at the Druids, which were later, much later than the Neolithic and the Bronze Age, so the Neolithic was 5,000 years ago, whereas the Druids were around 750 BC to 43 AD, when it was the Roman invasion. But what the Druids did say is they had very special centers called cores. CORS, and cores were colleges, and they recorded one at Amesbury, one possibly at Oxford, and one in Wales and one in Winchester. And this is where the Druids went to learn metaphysics. I think in the preceding era of the Bronze Age, that the Stonehenge, being close to Amesbury, one of the ancient cores that they named, was also like a university for learning. So I think at different times of the year, Stonehenge was used for different things. The healing aspect, according to the archaeologists Jeffrey Wainwright and Timothy DeVille, would have been around the midwinter time when Apollo, the healing god of the ancient Greeks, was said to manifest at Stonehenge. So Delphi and Stonehenge, Delphi being the oracle temple in Greece, where Apollo resided in the summer, Apollo would then go, the healing god, to the winter. So at different seasons, I think Stonehenge was different things. And I truly do believe it was a metaphysical university, one of the ancient three cores of the British Isles.
Wow, that's cool. I'd never heard that before. I was really fascinated. It was one of those. I wasn't at any point going, "Oh, I want to interrupt the question." I mean, no, I'm it's like you're talking about getting these cool classes. I'm just sitting here, it's like, all right, let's go.
I didn't want to ask a stupid question, so I will. What's the difference from the pendulums and the dowsing rods?
It depends what sort of pendulum that you're using. So, for example, what they have in common, a normal pendulum and dowsing rods, is information dowsing. You ask it a question to get an answer. That's the main premise of dowsing with using a normal pendulum. But then you get some very specialized pendulums that come from ancient Egypt. And they are called the Isis pendulum, the Karnak pendulum, and the Osiris pendulum. And they are specifically designed for healing purposes. And this was discovered way, way back in the 1930s when Imagine being at the Valley of the Kings, and it's a free-for-all. You've got German archaeologists, you've got the Italians, you've got Carter and Carnarvon of King Tut fame, and you have the French, and they're all excavating, trying to find that, you know, lucky gold hoard that Carter and Carnarvon found with King Tut. What the French diviners did find was these very unusual looking pendants or pendulums, and they investigated them and found that they were quite healing. So they are very specific to healing energy, the Isis pendulum, for instance, which is very, very different to information dowsing with a normal pendulum. Like, is there any underground water in this house? Yes or no. You wouldn't necessarily use an Egyptian pendulum like that. They are for healing and for taking out negative energy and for putting in positive energy. That's what they are used for, and they are depicted all over ancient Egypt, from the Valley of the Kings to Abydos, to Hathor's temple, to Edfu temple. They are there depicted with the gods holding them. There's one temple, it's called Komombo, it's just off the Nile, and on the frontispiece of this massive temple, you have two gods holding the Karnak pendulum, and from that you have the Ankh, the symbol of life, healing the humans below. It's a wonderful, wonderful pendulum.
Wow.
No, a good book on that. Is that Divining Ancient Sites? Would that be a good book to kind of, the one that you did? Would that be a good companion to what we just talked about?
Yeah, that's my kind of metaphysical book on earth energies, divining ancient sites. It covers numerous different types of energies that are found at temples worldwide, because the ancients weren't just looking for a crossing point of ley lines. They were looking for very, very deep underground water that is born within the earth and independent of rainfall, which esoteric water diviners called primary water, which I call yin water. It's giving it back the femininity of Gaia. She can produce water within her. And I will predict that you're going to have planets all over the kind of, solar system or wherever, that they can produce water, because the Gaia can. And that's always been known to esoteric water diviners. And this internal water is very harmonic, and it gives off a spiral pattern. So that's very, very deep water. And the ancients were looking for very deep aquifers that give off this spiral pattern, because it creates a gravitational field independent of Gaia's, and it creates a mild vortex energy pattern. When we measured that with engineer David Webb, we found that not only do you get the negative ions, which are very good for you, you also get a Hertz field that puts your brain into the alpha mode, which is about 7 Hertz to about 11 Hertz. And also Gaia has a background resonance called the Schumann resonance, which is also 7 Hertz as well. So it's about kind of entering these energy fields that allow us to relax and feel calm and feel good about ourselves. There's a lot of things going on at any one site. Then you have earth currents flowing into these sites as well. And you have grid lines like the Hartmann grid that's encompassing Gaia like a massive fishnet, and they're about 2.5 meters apart. So all of that goes on an ancient site, and then the lathe will conduct that energy, it is believed by some, to other sites that are, sometimes miles and kilometers apart.
And so that's, oh wow. Because one of the things, like, I'm not sure, this worshiping God's creation. It's like, well, it's like you don't want to destroy it. As I said, it's kind of like, it's kind of, there's that fine balance. You don't want to go too extreme one way or the other. It's you have that other book of yours, The New View of the Roll-Right Ring, exploring the ley lines and earth energies. And that one I've asked a couple of times, because there's some sites like over here in the US that are well known, that fall along the ley line system. And was this, I've been all day, I've been trying to figure out the best way to ask that question. I was struggling words to just, what what do you what do you think was, the catalyst that let people discover, that led to this discovery of this, like you said, the grid system, these ley lines, how they were able to figure out that if you went along these certain, like you said, these earth energy traveled along these lines. What would you say was part of the thing that led to this discovery from these cultures, like the Druids, these ancient cultures?
Well, I think they were very sensitized to the earth, and there's many different types of ley lines. The most powerful type of ley is called a ley system. That's where you have a long straight line linking one side to another in a linear fashion, and then you have two earth currents, a male and a female earth current, entwining it. So you've got a long straight line with currents entwining it. That's really very powerful. And that was rediscovered by people like Hamish Miller and Paul Broadhurst in the 1980s. So it's not just about having one thing again. We need to think about earth energies and ancient sites having a multiple different energies going on at the same time. But the primary thing that all of the cultures worldwide were looking for was the deep aquifers. Now, if you go to the Mexican pyramids, if you go to the Egyptian pyramids, if you go to temples worldwide, Stonehenge, Avebury, they're all above very, very deep aquifers. And that is a fact.
Huh.
Yeah, and that's the crazy, for me, it's just, getting into the stuff like the dowsing, that's always just the layman just looking at the way these things are, just how amazing it was that these things were exactly placed upon these different areas. It's not something that, it's more than a coincidence. Just as you start getting things stacked more and more as evidence piles up, you can't go, well, it was just luck, they just found this. Like, no, there has to be something to this, because like Austin brought up, you want to say it's a pseudoscience. Well, I'm sorry, you're watching her do it. It's like when she walks up and says, "Oh, here it is. I found the holy well." You can't.
It's not a random chance.
Yeah, at some point you have to sit here and think to yourself, there's got to be something to this. And instead of just tossing it out as it's just luck, start figuring out where, and that's where the amazing part was, how an ancient culture using, a branch was able to discover things that even modern science, we're just now, with LiDAR, we're finally being able to do, with technology. But somebody walking around, like I said, with a copper rod, like yourself, is able to, yeah, there it is.
Yeah, I think so. I think what the ancients were doing, I really think it was a combination with the ancient culture, especially the long skulled people, that they were very sensitized to the earth. And that's where I said earlier, we have this disconnect. And then when you put an instrument into their hands, be that a traditional hazel or willow wooden rod, or maybe a metal copper rod, because copper was around, in the Chalcolithic era that preceded the Bronze Age. So they had that substance there, which could have easily been utilized into more of like a twisted rod, like the Romans would have used. Then I think they could find all different sorts of substances. And when we look to how they lived, because when we look at ancient sites, we think about how they worshipped, how they had ceremony. Yeah. And they have all of these powerful energies we've described, like the geospiral, ley lines, grid lines, earth currents, telluric currents, whole host of thing going on. But when they chose about where they lived, they would go for very harmonic, peaceful types of earth energies, which are called branch spirals or habitation spirals. They would avoid the ley lines because the ancient Chinese categorized it very well. They said energy travels too fast along a ley, and it's too energetic, and that's not conducive to good health. So I think the ancients not only worshipped in harmony with the earth energy, they lived in harmony with it, and they would avoid negative influences, which are underground yang water. That's very surface water. That's water that's fallen from the sky and filled up the underground streams. That has been found throughout Europe since the 1930s to be very carcinogenic to live above long term. And the ancients avoided that. There's particular grid systems that are not conducive to live above. That was discovered by Dr. Kathy Batchelor, and she surveyed 11,000 homes throughout Europe and found that those that lived above underground Yang water and above the curry net, they would call them cancer houses. And so the ancients were avoided all of this, and that's documented by Dr. Kathy Batchelor, and numerous doctors, physicians used to be taking the earth energies very, very seriously. And sadly, it's now just put into like a new age quadrant of the universe, and it's dismissed by, the academics. Whereas in the 1960s, 70s, and 80s, they were all investigating it as a team, not as, you're wacky and you're crazy. So it's a sad demise about how dowsing has gone and how dowsing has become.
Now, is there a way to, is there a way to change that area? I mean, when you're in the bad section of the grids, obviously, you're doing that, you want to avoid that, but is there any way to reverse that process? Or is this just something like through the whole thing? There's a yin and there's a yang. There's going to be a negative for every positive. And so no matter what, you just kind of avoid that area because this is not going to be good.
Exactly. Say you've got, a really good analogy that I've often used is say that, you've got a newborn in the house and you put the cot in an area and the baby cries and it cries and it cries and it cries. You do everything that you can for that baby and it just doesn't do anything. Or a little kid can't sleep. Move the bed by about 15 centimeters one way to test it out first of all, and they'll probably find it goes into a neutral zone and people be able to sleep more. If you wake up in a very awkward position, for example, like you wake up at an angle like that, it's probably because your body in an unconscious sleep mode, or semi-unconscious sleep mode rather, is avoiding the grid lines, so you move your body away. There's signs of geopathic stress. Incidentally, that negative energy is called geopathic stress. Yeah. And for instance, there's signs of it. You wake up feeling fatigued. You grind your teeth. You wake up feeling tired. You have night terrors. Children can't sleep. What Dr. Kathy Batchelor found as well, and this, I think people should wake up and be aware, because what Dr. Kathy Batchelor found back in the 1970s, and she wrote about this in the 1980s, was if children are studying above these toxic geopathic stress grid lines, they don't take on the information. It slows their learning curve down. So all we have to do is look at a classroom and go, well, let's position the desks in a particular manner, or in a hospital, let's put the beds away from the grid, then you will find that children learn faster. And in another survey, what they found was that out of 8,000 people, and imagine this, especially I live in a country that has the NHS service, and God love the NHS. But what they found in Germany and Austria with a long-term study was a third of hospital admissions during 1991 and 1998, I think it was a 7-year study, a third of them were in hospital due to geopathic stress. And they did blood tests because geopathic stress makes your blood a little bit thicker. So it makes you prone to heart attacks. It makes you prone to strokes, for example. If we live in harmony with the earth and we live in harmony with the earth energy, it's a no-brainer. Kids are going to learn easier and we're going to have a longer, healthier life.
That's incredible. I've never. So is that something that you have somebody like yourself come in and do like a house, just go through the house and just check this thing out? Because one of those things, you've always had those. I can't say I can attest to if I slept here, I have a horrible thing. I can't think back and say I could think about that. But as you're explaining it, it makes sense, because as you're getting into some of these things, these natural healers, there was something to this. It just, when you look in here, the fact that somebody was able to discover this, and just the sheer point of moving just emotion over here, all of a sudden you're able to be more in tune, makes complete sense, especially if you're attuned to some energy that's around you. when you're off kilter, it's just like being like with a stereo system. You got the left and right, and if you move over to one side, it sounds off, and if you come right here, like, oh wow, it sounds perfect.
The whole feng shui thing, right?
Yeah. But you see, with feng shui, that's the art of placement, which will enhance your money sector, your relationship sector. It will not work. The art of placement will not work if you are above bad earth energy. It simply won't. And the easiest way to find out, there is a specialist way of finding the Curry grid, but that's a little bit complex. I'll give your listeners a very easy way to find the best way to put their bed in their bedroom. And it's very, very easy. You stand in the doorway with one single rod pointing straight ahead and parallel to the ground. How easy is that? You're just holding it like I'm holding those glasses there. And then you say to your rod, show me the best, healthiest position for my bed. And it might go a little bit off where your bed is. That's where you put your bed.
Oh.
Julie was just commented. She goes, "Everyone's going to be moving their beds tonight." I can just see some people. It's like you're sleeping. You hear your partner grinding their teeth, and all of a sudden you're over there just shoving the bed over to another location. What are you doing? Like, I'm moving the bed.
We're getting you off the grid. We're getting off the grid.
Yeah. She's all freaking out because you're in the doorway and you're over here with a rod.
What are you doing?
I'm trying to find the placement.
Obviously, go to your website to buy the dowsing rods, but what's stopping somebody just to go to the local hardware store and buy a copper rod and saying, "Hey, look, I got my dowsing rod."
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and also, like I say, you get all the signs of geopathic stress. So if you're not having any of those symptoms, obviously you don't need to move the bed. But my whole kind of stance with working with earth energy is about learning to live in harmony with the earth energies. And that's what I'm saying the ancestors did. They found very powerful ones for healing, to put healing temples above. They found mild ones to put their homes and their settlements above. And even when it comes to seeds and planting seeds in the ground, there was some great work done back in the 90s by an author called John Burke. If you charge seeds up and you put them into a really positive earth energy field, and then you go to plant them thereafter, you will find they will grow faster and straighter and stronger. Now, John Burke didn't put them into what I call earth energy. I'm saying if you put them into earth energy, he just put them at the centers of ancient sites, went to a laboratory and found that they grew much straighter and faster. What I'm saying is it's because they go into an earth energy field. Now, animals, they know what's good for them. They've got a great connection with Gaia. It's us humans that have lost it. If you look to how animals behave, like dogs, a bitch that is very heavily pregnant, that wants to break out and find her own birthing place rather than being told where to give birth, then they will inevitably go and find a positive geospiral. It's called a geospiral energy pattern to give birth of. That was discovered by the master dowser, Guy Underwood, in the 1950s. Then he did a long-term survey and found the offspring was healthier and more vibrant and more stronger. So just by giving birth above positive earth energy gives you a good stance. Now, you could find that in hospitals. You could find the most positive places, decode the land, and then build the construct and its departments upon that. Would give the sick a much more advantageous start to get to a better for self-healing.
Now, is that why the dog just spins like on the couch and the floor? You're like, lay down.
Yeah.
Lay down. And it's just rotating around. You're like, would you lay down? That's what it
is. One of my dogs' name is Gaia. So every time you say Gaia, I'm looking for her, like, where's she at? She does it every night before bed. She spins, plops. Or she's digging. I'm like, what do you stop? Just lay down. Like, stop.
And April had it.
Another top tip for geopathic stress is, I mean, Gaia would be, dogs really love positive earth energy. Cats like geopathic stress. I mean, as long as they're not sat on your lap fuss, obviously they're going to go to you for that. But if you see, like, you know, in gardens and places where cats just naturally go by themselves, not for fuss or anything, that potentially could be geopathic stress areas, because cats like that energy. Same as what we call gnats over here. They're like little flying insects that
Same here.
fly around. They like negative earth energy as well. So just by looking towards nature, you can start to find out what the earth energies are like in that vicinity by what trees grow, what animals like it. For example, I don't know if you call them moles. They're little blind creatures that kick up mounds. They always follow underground yang streams. So just by looking in the countryside, that's yang water. That's not good to live above.
So like gnats, like when they swarm in like those groups, that's kind of that would be an indication possibly of, you know, that that's one of those negative areas right there, is why they're in that one specific spot.
Exactly. This was all discovered by master dowsers going back to the 1950s. And I've just seen that April's asked the question, what about birds? That's a really good question, because birds tend to follow long distance grid systems, grid lines that go from one part of the world to another. And that was found by Russian scientists going back about 50 or 60 years ago. So again, birds, animals, they follow these natural electromagnetic lines and find their way to migrate and to come back. It's not because they have, you know, a sat nav in their heads.
Yeah.
They're following the grid lines. It's as simple as that.
She also had a question too about is there symbols and signs to let us know if we're above bad energy?
Cats.
Cats, apparently. Yeah. It's like if the cat's laying there, stay away from that spot.
And also, for example, oak trees tend to like the negative forces as well, whereas fruit-bearing trees, they tend to like positive earth energy. So if a fruit-bearing tree is showing signs of disease, that's probably because it's above the negative earth energy. So anything that bears fruit in the wild that is healthy and robust, that's going to be good types of energy to think about.
Like you just said, cats are mainly going towards negative energy. April just said she had many crows coming into her property. Assume that crows are signs of bad things are coming. Is that true?
Well, for instance, crows do like underground water. So they tend to flock where there are lots of underground streams or an underground aquifer. And you get different types of crows, especially in the UK. You get rooks, you get jackdaws, you get ravens, for example, and they tend to congregate there. But they're not necessarily a bad omen, because I'm sure that you've heard of a World War II leader of England called Winston Churchill. I mean, he was said to have been a druid. And there's an old saying in England through the White Tower, the Tower of London, that if the ravens leave the tower, England shall fall, and England, will be in a bad position. Well, during the Second World War, the ravens left the Tower of London, and Winston Churchill went out of his way to get more ravens and clip their wings, because he knew England would fall to the Germans. So the raven bird in the English psyche, if you will, is a very positive, powerful force for good. Saved the war, the ravens.
Damn.
Now, she was talking about an onion that refuses to rot and continues to grow. I'm going to say that's either a really cool spot you have it in, or that's GMO. That's what I'm going to go with. If it's not one to rot, it's like, And then that's Sarah is like, her neighborhood is called Briar Oaks, and there's many, many oak trees. So she's like, uh-oh.
Wow.
Damn oak trees. Man, this is crazy. I learned so much tonight.
Yeah, I just, having you on. I mean, that's pretty cool. It's just learning this stuff, because that's been one of the things too. It's just about that I've been looking forward to a lot. I wanted to obviously really touch on some of your passion with the megalithic structures and get that out there for work, because you've done that all over Europe and in the Mediterranean. But for me, it's like I've just lately, the topics of the dowsing and geomancy, even though I didn't really place it like you said, it's one of those, it really makes sense, because I've always had kind of a connection with rocks in some fashion, and I've really been drawn to runes and actually using those for divination. So when I hold them, every now and then I'll feel one and it starts to heat up. We had it on a show, and my hand was actually getting sweaty holding one of the rocks, and it was just, as soon as I let it go, my hand cooled off and it stopped. And so there was some connection to rocks as I hold them. It's just because I've always had that as young. I'd always speak into a rock, like for good luck. I'd always talk to it, and I'd say something to it, and I'd hand it to somebody and say, "Here, keep this with you. It'll bring you luck."
Yeah, well, it's where we get the expression, touch stone, isn't it? There's something very sacred about touching stone and being around stone. And I really do feel all the people that I've taken to ancient sites worldwide, they feel there is something very special about the stone. And at Stonehenge, for example, you've got one stone. It's now recumbent. That means it's fallen over and it's flat on the ground. Okay, and archaeologists such as Richard Atkinson said it was tooled, so that's made to be smooth. We see Stonehenge as being very smooth stones. They're called dress stones when they look like a lozenge shape. There's particular stones at Stonehenge that don't fit into that model, one of which has like a spine going all the way down it. And the archaeologists say that's a mistake. It's not supposed to be like that. It was a mistake. But when you look at places like Stonehenge, everything had meaning. Everything had meaning, and they did things in a particular manner. And that spine stone, when it was at stone number 60, if you want to look it up on the model of Stonehenge, when that was upright and erect, if you would be able to put your back or spine right the way down that spine stone. And lots of people have felt, just like you felt your rune stone heating up, they have felt heat come from that spinal ridge along that standing stone. So I think that was deliberately tooled that way to look like a spine, because it's a healing stone in effect.
Yeah, my sister, she's one of the comment right there. She goes, Craig, that's and that's actually means, crag of the rock.
Brilliant.
And so she just brought that, and I'm like, that's right. That's actually what, and I'm like, I go, maybe this is just one of those things. Mom knew, that it's like we got it. There's the connection, that's pretty cool. I was looking up that image, and I think, tell me if I got this correct here, because I said I want to make sure I got the right picture here. Let's see. I'm going to open this up in another tab, because there's one you were talking. It was the one you were talking about here. And hopefully I got it right. If I didn't, if I didn't, it's Austin's fault.
What?
That's right. Stone number 60 is the one that's led down. That's stone number 60. The one that's led down is stone number 59 that has the spinal ridge. You can just about make it out there. And the fact that's concrete that was put into that stone. Yeah. You see that's all concrete. Now, this is an amazing story. This is where Professor Richard Atkinson saw that stone in the kind of 50s, and it was slightly leaning over. But you get lots of standing stones that slightly lean over as if they're bowing to sacred space. Well, he said that no, it shouldn't be doing that. I'm going to make it perpendicular. Yeah, so he got the cranes and he pulled that stone number 60 up, and it started to crack. Yeah, and it left out a sound, and that's why it's got all of the concrete in. And the spine stone is its partner that's just down the side there. That's it. You've got it right. That ridge just along the middle bit there. And then that has heat. That's it, bang on. And that releases a lot of heat, just like when you were holding the rune stone, as I said earlier. So some of these stones at Stonehenge, possibly stone number 60, was meant to lean and bow to sacred space, because that's what they were designed to do. The heel stone points into Stonehenge like that. It bows to sacred space. And at Avebury, you have a stone that deliberately leans, bowing to sacred space. So that was the reason why that's so full of concrete. Poor stone.
To do that. Oh wow! That's now I've really got to get over there just so I can touch the stone and see what happens if they let they let you. It's like go running
Even
in there.
on private access, even if you buy private access, it's quite expensive without a tour guide fee on top of that. You can't touch the stones anymore at Stonehenge. They have banned it.
You better have some good lawyers, Craig.
Do the Naruto run, like breaking into Area 51, just go full on running in there, YOLO. I'm going to touch the rock.
Unfortunately, Craig, you don't have the fun.
I'll be right behind you.
Yeah, just run, Maria. We're going to make it. Just right as we get there, the taser prongs hit us. We just fall over.
Unless you have a GoFundMe started, we don't have enough funds to break you at a British jail. So don't do that.
Oh,
please. We don't want that to happen.
Wouldn't that be, what are you in for? I tried to touch a rock at Stonehenge.
You too?
Oh, that's awesome. Well, hey, Maria, I want to thank you so much for coming in. I really appreciate it. Just looking at here, we got. I don't know how late you stay up, but I'm just doing the clock in my head. I'm like, oh, we got to let her go to sleep. It's getting so late over there. Because I mean, I think it's what right now. We're approaching 1 o'clock in the morning. Yeah, so it's
Party.
Yeah. That's past my bedtime.
Definitely past mine. But it's been lovely talking to you both, and it's been fun as well. And I hope that your listeners has found it quite informative as well.
I think so. I just from everybody, between April, Jessica's on here. Nancy, she's really enjoyed it. My sister, just everybody. Go support her right now. Like I said, go to the aveburyexperience.co.uk, and that's her site. She's got lots of information on there. Real quick, I didn't touch with COVID going through right now with this, because UK is going through another round of lockdowns and stuff. How is that? Are you still able to do any sort of tours, even like small groups, or is that just no?
No. I'm in complete lockdown, in effect. So I can't really go out. You can't even leave you're not supposed to even leave the town to go to another place, really.
Come dressed as a group with Purell, hand sanitizer. Just come dressed up like it's Halloween. It's like, I'm safe. as I'm making my run for the rock, because I want to. She's going to regret giving me that pint of beer, real fast. It's like, where did he go? It's like, dash out there to go touch some stones.
God.
So, yeah, she's got all of her books on there. If you purchase, like I said, you're going to be able to get a signed copy. Just go there, Facebook, check her out, but definitely go to the website, buy some books, support her, thank her for taking time out of her sleep schedule to come on and talk with us crazy people. So, Maria, have a fantastic night. Blessed to you. I would just appreciate you, coming on and just talk with us. You have an amazing wealth of knowledge. That was gracious of you to share with us tonight. Yeah. So, wish you the best, and I hope that you're able to get to your tour soon, because those look amazing.
Fingers crossed. I'll take you around Avebury and Stonehenge whenever you come round.
Okay, I'll send you a message, because I definitely want to go see the Red Lion pub. Now that I'm hearing a lot about it, I'll just hear it, and then you'll be able to tell me. It's like, no, it's time to get out of here, because now the rowdy crowd's coming in, and they're not going to, we got to get out of here before that happens. So, all right.
Then.
All right. Have a great night.
Cheerio then. Bye. Bye. Bye.
All right. Everybody, once again, go check her out at the aveburyexperience.co.uk. Help support her. Nanny Cakes 407 on Facebook. Give her a call at 407-923-2898 here in the Central Florida area. Help support her as well. If you mentioned that you ran into us and you unfortunately are traumatized and you need some cake to recover, is mention that, and she will really take pity on you and give you a discount on some cupcakes or a cake, just to say, I'm sorry, I didn't mean for that to happen.
Yeah,
So
I'm very sorry for knowing that.
Oh, that, yeah, just, threebeardspodcast.com. Go to patreon.com/threebeardspodcast. Become one with the beardos. And guys, if you can't, like I said, if you can't do it that way, it's just as well, it helps us out to share the show, get this out there. I mean, it takes a second. Just share it, like it. If you see our posts, like them. Share them. I mean, we're talking 2 mouse clicks, 2 finger taps on the thing.
Mhm.
It doesn't seem like much, on your end, but it means a world to us because it does numbers. And we're also we met up with a guy who's JJ Beard Company, was really gracious and offered and put us on Patriot Radio on Xeno so you can download the app, Xeno Media. I think it's Xeno. I want to make sure I'm getting that right. Yeah, it's Zeno. You can get that in the App Store, and just like a Patriot Radio, and they just play classic rock. They play mixture songs. They had Dwight Yoakam. They had ZZ Top. They had just kind of mixture of songs on there, along with, and they offered to play our show, and so that was pretty cool. So really want to thank JJ Beard Company. So go check them out, jjbeardcompany.com. And tell them, we heard about them, just check them out. Thanks for watching the show. Once again, please go to her website, and support her as well. Telling her thank you. Everybody, have an awesome night. Appreciate you watching. Good night.